What if I told you that almost everything you think you know about volcanoes is wrong? That the terrifying images of surprise eruptions and fiery gods are mostly just Hollywood fiction and ancient legends? Today, we're blowing the lid off 6 of the biggest volcano myths out there. Get ready to have your mind erupted. Volcanoes. They're some of the most dramatic and powerful forces on the planet. They build islands, create mountains, and honestly, they capture our imagination like nothing else. For centuries, we've told stories about them. Tales of angry gods, gateways to the underworld, and unstoppable rivers of fire. And Hollywood has definitely had its fun painting this picture of earth-shattering explosions that come out of nowhere to threaten our heroes. But what's the real story? The truth is, our view of volcanoes is often clouded by these dramatic movies and ancient beliefs. So we're here to set the record straight. We're going to tackle 3 scientific myths that just get the facts wrong, and 3 cultural myths that, while they are fascinating, don't tell the whole story. By the end of this, you'll see these geological giants in a completely new light. Let's dig in. Alright, let's start with one of the most common mistakes you see everywhere, from movies to maybe even the news. A volcano erupts, and this massive dark cloud pours into the sky. Everyone calls it smoke. But here's the thing, volcanoes don't make smoke. See, smoke is what you get from burning something like a campfire. What shoots out of a volcano is totally different. That scary-looking cloud is actually a plume of volcanic ash and gas. And volcanic ash isn't the soft, fluffy stuff you get from burnt wood. It's made of tiny, sharp particles of rock, minerals, and volcanic glass. Picture this. Deep underground, you have molten rock, magma, that's full of dissolved gases under insane pressure. It's basically a shaken-up soda bottle. When that pressure is finally released, the gases expand like crazy, shattering the magma and launching it into the air. Those tiny, now solid bits of magma are what we call ash. This stuff is so abrasive it can sandblast paint right off a car, and if it gets sucked into a jet engine, it can melt and fuse to the turbine blades, causing the entire engine to fail. So that smoke cloud is really a mix of this pulverized rock and volcanic gases like water vapor, carbon dioxide, and sulfur dioxide. Next time you see an eruption, you'll know you're not looking at smoke, but a ferocious cloud of rock and gas. When you hear the word volcano, your mind probably jumps to a huge mountain-destroying explosion, like Mount St. Helens back in 1980. Hollywood absolutely loves these kinds of eruptions, where the heroes have to outrun a pyroclastic flow, that super-fast current of hot gas and rock, but that's only one side of the coin. The reality is, not all eruptions are violent. In fact, volcanologists sort eruptions into different types, from pretty gentle to extremely explosive. The 2 main kinds are explosive and effusive. Explosive eruptions are the famous ones, driven by thick, gassy magma that traps pressure until it finally blows its top. But effusive eruptions are way more common and a lot less dramatic. These involve runny lava that lets gas escape easily. So instead of a massive kaboom, you get a relatively calm flow of lava. The volcanoes in Hawaii, like Kilauea, are famous for this. They produce these slow-moving lava flows that literally create new land. Now don't get me wrong, you still wouldn't want to be in the way. Even gentle lava is incredibly destructive, swallowing up everything in its path. But are they all the earth-shattering explosions we see in disaster movies? Not at all. A lot of volcanoes just flow. And what about those movie scenes where people are outrunning lava? Well, it depends. Most lava from effusive eruptions is pretty slow, sometimes moving at less than a mile per hour, slow enough to just casually walk away from. But if that lava gets trapped in a channel or a tube, it can move shockingly fast. During some eruptions in Hawaii, lava has been clocked at speeds up to 17 miles per hour. That's faster than most of us can sprint. So while you can probably outwalk some lava, you definitely can't outrun it all. This one is a classic Hollywood move. It's a beautiful day, families are having a picnic, and then, bam! A nearby mountain just explodes with zero warning. It makes for a great movie scene, but in the real world, it's almost completely fiction. While we can't predict the exact second an eruption will happen, most volcanoes give us plenty of clues. Think of a volcano like a patient in a hospital, and volcanologists are its doctors, constantly checking its vital signs. They use a whole range of high-tech tools to keep tabs on what's happening deep underground. One of the biggest tells is seismic activity. As magma moves up, it has to crack through rock, which creates swarms of little earthquakes. Scientists use seismographs to pick up on these tremors, which usually get more frequent and stronger right before an eruption. They also watch for ground deformation. As a magma chamber fills up, it can literally make the ground above it swell and bulge. sometimes by several inches or even feet. Sensitive instruments called tilt meters and GPS stations can detect these tiny changes in the volcano's shape. Another huge indicator is gas. Volcanoes are always releasing gases like sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. Right before an eruption, the amount and type of these gases can change in a big way. Scientists are constantly sampling these gases from the ground and even from space, looking for any sign that magma is on the move. By putting all this data together, the quakes, the swelling, the gas, scientists can often issue warnings days, weeks, or even months ahead of time. The evacuation of thousands of people before Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines in 1991 is a perfect example of how well this works. So, while a surprise eruption is a terrifying idea, modern science usually gives us a heads up. Alright, so we've tackled some of the science, now let's get into the myths and legends. For thousands of years, way before we understood plate tectonics, people looked at these fiery mountains and saw the work of powerful and often very moody gods. Maybe the most famous volcano god is Pele, the Hawaiian goddess of fire and volcanoes. Legend says her home is the Halemaumau crater on Kilauea. She's described as passionate and volatile, and eruptions are seen as her getting angry. Stories talk about her power to create new land with lava, and native Hawaiians have long held a deep respect for her, leaving offerings to keep her happy. And it's not just in Hawaii. All over the world, cultures have connected volcanoes with their gods. In ancient Rome, the god Vulcan, where we get the word volcano, was the god of fire and was said to have his blacksmith forge inside Mount Etna. In the Philippines, many believe the god Gugurang lives inside Mayon volcano, and it only erupts when he's mad. The ancient Aztecs honored Xiuhtecutli as their god of fire, heat, and volcanoes. These stories were humanity's first shot at explaining one of nature's most awesome and terrifying forces. They were a way of showing respect for the raw power of the earth. Today we know eruptions are driven by geology, moving magma, gas pressure, shifting tectonic plates, not by the mood swings of a god. But these legends show a deep, ancient connection between us and the powerful planet we live on. Building on that idea of volcano gods is another huge myth, that eruptions are a form of divine punishment or a terrible omen. When a volcano wiped out a town, it was pretty easy to think that the gods were angry, or that the people had done something to deserve it. You see this theme in stories all over the world. For instance, some legends from the Acoma people in the American Southwest tell of how lava flows destroyed their ancestors' cornfields as a supernatural punishment. In Indonesia, wild legends surround the infamous Krakatoa volcano. One story even connects its eruption to a cursed princess who was turned into a dragon, whose rage makes the volcano blow. In Japan, Mount Fuji is a sacred place, and its eruptions have often been seen through a spiritual lens. These stories were a way to find order in complete chaos. They put a moral reason on what seemed like a random act of nature. If a village was destroyed, it wasn't just geology, it was a consequence. It was a way to find meaning in a catastrophe. Of course, we now know that eruptions are just a fundamental part of how our planet works, driven by heat and pressure deep inside the Earth. They aren't tied to human morality or divine judgment. Still, these myths stick around because they tap into our very human need to find a reason for things, especially when faced with something so overwhelmingly powerful. So, we've talked about angry gods and divine punishments. It's easy to write these off as just stories, fun tales with no basis in reality. But this might be the biggest myth of all, the idea that these legends have zero scientific value. Lately, scientists have started to realize that these ancient oral traditions often contain incredibly accurate geological observations, passed down through generations. They aren't just myths, they're a form of historical record just coded in a story. Take the legends of Pele in Hawaii. Hawaiian chants describe volcanic events with stunning accuracy. One chant describes a massive lava flow from the 15th century that geologists have since confirmed with hard evidence. Other chants seem to describe the formation of Kilauea's caldera and that there was once a water lake inside it, details that perfectly match the geological record. These stories gave scientists clues to piece together past eruptions and better understand the volcano's behavior, and it's the same story elsewhere. Indigenous stories in North America have detailed descriptions of eruptions and ash falls that happened centuries ago, long before any modern records. These oral traditions aren't competing with science, they're completing it. They offer a rich, untapped source of data that gives us a window into Earth's past. By listening to these ancient stories, scientists can build a much more complete history of our planet's most powerful events. The legends aren't just myths, they're eyewitness accounts from the past. So, from smoke that isn't smoke to gods that are actually geology, we've shattered 6 major volcano myths. It turns out reality is often way more complex and interesting than fiction. If you had fun blowing the lid off these misconceptions with us, make sure to erupt that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. Volcanoes aren't just mountains, they're a crossroads where science, history, and human culture all meet. They build worlds and inspire legends. We've learned that they don't all explode, they rarely erupt without warning, and their smoke is actually a cloud of pulverized rock. We've also seen that the ancient myths are so much more than stories. They hold real scientific truths, hidden in their narratives, and show just how closely our ancestors were watching the world around them. The next time you see a volcano, remember there's always more to the story. What other volcano myths have you heard? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching.